Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Could you please state your name?
Kevin Hill.
Kevin Hill. Well, thank you for being here, Kevin Hill. We're going to get started. So first, tell us about where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, specifically Cleveland Heights, Ohio, right next to Cleveland. It was an interesting time to grow up in the 80s. I was born in the late 70s, so growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was a good community to be from. Yeah.
Okay. What was your neighborhood like?
It was very interesting because, especially I think for that time and for the Midwest, it was a very integrated community, mostly just black and white. But we all got along. As I'm older, I kind of see things a little bit differently than I did growing up. Things, were harmonious for the most part. People got along. But now growing up, I see things, a little bit differently because I was raised in a generation where it was, preached to be colorblind. And so it was very much, people just saw people for people, at least in my generation and among my friend group and everything. As I've gained some age, I've, seen the kind of fallacies of thinking about things in a colorblind kind of way. And I think a lot of my friends who I grew up with are also, coming to those realizations that we should really dive into and understand and appreciate each other's cultures as opposed to trying to whitewash them away.
Interesting. Yeah. And was that same kind of harmonious aspect around when you went to school?
Yeah, it was. And we knew it. See, that's the thing. We knew it. We knew that we were different in terms of having a community of folks who were more integrated, a decent amount of interracial couples, just friend groups being intermingled and everything. We knew that we were different. We call we call it the Heights. We knew we were different in the Heights. And yeah, I still have friends to this day, good friends to this day that I, have known since elementary school, middle school, high school. Yeah.
When did you know that the Heights was different than maybe other areas surrounding Ohio?
I'm imagining it was probably around middle school, maybe into high school when I started really having that awareness. Because it was real obvious. It was, it's a pretty classic Midwest city around the Rust Belt where you have the inner city that is, suffers from disinvestment, it suffers from redlining and people being stripped of opportunity. And then as you get further away, the suburbs get whiter and whiter and whiter. And so we were in that zone where we were right next to the city, right next to the hood, but before you hit all the real white suburbs and the affluence and everything. So, a working class area. And anywhere we would go, we would see the disparity. And so once I got to a certain age, seeing you go up this way and this is what you see, you go down that way, this is what you see. That became probably, I would say I probably became aware of that sometime, around middle school or so, maybe into high school. Yeah. That said, it wasn't something that we talked about in my household. It wasn't something that we talked about in school. It wasn't really something we talked about among my friend group either, in terms of why these situations exist, why things are inequitable. And really just into adulthood, I, really started to learn why the circumstances that people live in, the degree to which the circumstances people live in are a product of the systems that are in place around them, the multitude of systems that allow some folks to live a certain way and force others to live another way.
Interesting. Yeah. Who or what influenced you the most as a child?
I thought about that question. I would say my friends. I grew up with just my mom. My dad wasn't around, and obviously she had a tremendous impact in me being the man who I am and how I grew up. But because she was alone, I was very, very independent, latchkey kid. And my friend group, more than anything, are the folks who influenced me. Luckily, I found folks who had good values, good morals. We got into our trouble, don't get me wrong, but it was never in a like violent way or a way where we wanted to hurt other people in the community or or anything like that. It was more getting into trouble here and there, but trying not to get caught. And so a good group of friends that I just came up with, and we had, I think, good values, good morals, and yeah, that was the biggest influence on my life, no doubt.
Okay. Do you have any siblings?
I do, yep. I have a sister who I grew up with, an older sister, 2.5 years older than me. And I also have a brother who lives in Seattle, a half brother. My dad, he moved from Cleveland to Seattle when I was 1, and he had my brother. And I've gotten close to him, especially since I've been out here on the West Coast. I have gotten real close to him, and I consider him my closest sibling now. And then I also have an adopted sister who my mom adopted after I moved out here to California, and so I've gotten to know her, a little bit from distance. She lives in Tennessee.
Interesting.
So yeah, my family's all spread out. Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned from family?
Yeah. I'll say this. I've learned a lot more about my family in recent years. My mom passed in 2017, and that's really accelerated my desire to forge relationships with my dad's side of the family especially. And so I've met a lot of cousins, aunties, uncle. Well, not really so many uncles. Yeah, some uncles, but a lot of cousins especially. And first of all, I'm real proud of my family. We are a family full of people who we're survivors, whatever circumstances we've been put in. I got family thriving all over this country. I got family thriving in Seattle, family thriving on the East Coast in the DC area, thriving in Atlanta, thriving in Michigan, thriving in Cleveland, Texas, out here in the Bay. And it's just great to know that my family generally is doing really well, that we're thriving, and just how much love they have for me and we have for each other is something that I wish I'd have had more of growing up. And anytime you get it, it feels good.
Yeah. It sounds like you've made a lot more of a concerted effort as you turn into adult to really foster those relationships. Yeah,
no doubt. When I lost my mom, it was very abrupt. I really feel like I started, after getting over the initial grief, the first year or so, I feel like that's really when something switched for me. This was in my late 30s. Something I feel like really switched for me, where I really started growing into my manhood and really feeling like, okay, like I'm not someone's son anymore. And that was something real deep to let sink in, to not feel like a son. Like it's the most fundamental persona that I had. I think that we all have. Until we don't have it anymore. I'm used to being a friend. I'm used to being a father. Now I'm used to being a husband. I was used to being a son first, but not being one anymore. I really started feeling like I'm really coming into my manhood and really asking myself, what can I do? What can I do with my skills? What can I do with what I've been given, the blessings that I have? And one of the things I wanted to do is just get closer to my family. So that's been really, really meaningful.
Excellent. I'm curious, what does being black in America mean to you?
Yeah, I believe first and foremost, it means being a survivor. Mm-hmm. When I think about all that our ancestors have been through, I just can't even imagine the atrocities, the degree of loss that families suffered as their kids got sold, as they were, raped by, people who quote unquote owned them, and everything that families have gone through, that survival instinct that so many of our ancestors had to allow us to be here today, just walking around, breathing and talking and telling our stories. I'm entirely grateful for whoever endured anything to survive and allow me to be here today. I think we're survivors, and I'm real proud of that. And I think because of that, there's a lot of gifts that we have and a lot of talents that we have on top of all of that make us incredibly strong individuals, because Black folks don't have it easy.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And just on that token, what does liberation mean to you in 2021?
Yeah. One of the things I've really appreciated about our modern, there's a lot of things I don't appreciate, but one of the things I do appreciate about our modern culture and society is, for the first time in the last several years, Black folks really have the opportunity to, we have the opportunity to tell our own stories. We have access to mass media in ways that we never had before. With tech, and things have changed so much in my lifetime that that to me is one of the biggest areas where I appreciate just hearing stories from the perspective that I care about, that I know are unvarnished, that I know have my well-being at heart, have other Black folks' well-being at heart, as opposed to the only things that get out there are things that white folks want us to, want to get out there about us. So I really appreciate that. And so to me, liberation is being able to tell our own stories, being able to have control over our lives and our destiny, and just self-actualization, and helping everyone to be the best that they can be, is part of what liberation looks like. And there's a lot of ways to get there, but to me, it's got to start with educating one another, and education has to start with being able to communicate with one another, because we can't learn the way we need to learn if we're not learning from each other, and we can't do that without the means of communication to enable that. So to me, it starts there. It starts with being able to communicate our stories to each other, about each other, and that's where, to me, it starts education.
I hear that, yeah. Just having that open forms of communication goes a long way, especially towards learning, not just learning about other people, but also learning about yourself. Mm-hmm. A lot of ways to do that, which is one of the things you can get, especially if you're talking to family or other people that you consider family. So, yeah, definitely makes sense from there. What would you say are the top 3 things that you think are probably most harmful to the Black community?
Yeah. I think that more than anything, it's the multitude of systems that are rigged against Black folks and for privileged white folks, specifically for privileged white folks. There certainly are plenty of poor people in this country who aren't Black, who are victimized by those same systems. But there absolutely is a caste system in this country that allows our political system to be undemocratic, that allows our education systems to be inequitable, that allows our access to resources and abilities to create businesses to be inequitable. So to me, I really see it as an ecosystem that helps to promote one group of people in this country and keep other folks down. And the thing that I find so, what's the best word? It's disheartening, but it's also, it's just really hard for me to accept that that even those folks who have a lot of privilege, who do benefit from these systems, they don't win either by keeping folks down. When we have areas in our communities all over this country of blight, of depression, of disinvestment, where infrastructure investments need to be made and all of that, it doesn't benefit them to have those in their community. And I really want to fight for what it looks like to actually invest in our entire community, because in the long run, everyone wins. Even in the short run, everyone wins if we can actually make the investments that we need. And so, yeah, to me, it's the entire ecosystem that keeps Black folks down. And there's just so many facets to those. Pick one, whether it's healthcare, whether it's access to clean food, good food, clean water, education. There's just, like I said, it's a big ecosystem of oppression in this country.
Yeah, that's for sure. What do you think are some ways that we can fix some of these issues you're talking about?
First of all, white folks aren't going to fix it for us. We need to organize. Second of all, we can't do it on our own. Even when we do organize, we need to find allies. We need to find folks who we can align with to help improve our basic life circumstances for the average Black person in this country. What kind of education can that person expect? What kind of job can that person expect to get? What level of opportunity is just put in front of the average Black person? And to me, we need to get together, organize, strategize. Instead of staying in our cliques, staying in these little pods, we need to really think about how to expand that tent and learn how to work with one another. There's a lot of cultural and historical reasons why that's been difficult, in terms of families getting split apart forcibly, or families splitting apart based on the Great Migration, or a secondary migration coming all out west, like someone like me has done. But we got to come together in common interests and organize and find as many allies as we can to put pressure on the prevailing power systems to really fight for liberation. But it has to start with us, because no one's going to do it for us.
That's true. And you said you were, earlier you said you were invested in fixing kind of a whole community and just seeing what that looks like, rather than necessarily just being pockets in one area and that type of thing. I'm also curious, what brought you out to the West Coast?
Yeah. So growing up, I knew that I didn't want to stay in Cleveland. Cities like Cleveland, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Chicago, those cities in that Rust Belt area, they're very much poster children for systemic racism. Racism didn't stop in the Mason-Dixon line by any means. Like I said, Cleveland is one of those areas where there are big areas of blight, of disinvestment. After white folks left the city, it became real easy to redline Black folks into certain areas and then disinvest or build power plants or build railroads, through historically Black neighborhoods. And I just knew that it wasn't the place where I was going to live my best life. And so I moved out here three weeks after I graduated college. I moved out here with a backpack and $2,500 in my bank account in the summer of 2000. And I had done 5 different internships in college. So I had a nice resume. I felt pretty confident. The economy was doing really well at that time. I felt pretty confident I'd be able to land in something, find something to do. And I did, and I've built a whole life out here. And it just, obviously, the Bay appealed to me in a lot of different ways in terms of economic opportunity, a place where I could find community with like-minded folks, a place that's, even though I grew up with a decent amount of diversity, that's even more diverse than anything I had experienced before. And that all really appealed to me. Obviously, the weather, the proximity to good, good clean air and outdoors and all of that really appealed to me as well. But more than anything, I was just looking to find community and plant some roots in a place where I feel like I could live my best life.
Excellent. Regarding finding that community that eventually led you to the Brotherhood of Elders Network. So please tell me how you got involved with the network.
Yeah, Brother Damon Francis introduced me to the Brotherhood. I still remember we were hiking in the Oakland Hills, and he was telling me about this organization, and he had gone on a retreat and came back and was telling me about it, and it just sounded fantastic. And I'm like, all right, man, like hook me up, how can I, get to meet some of these brothers? How can I get involved? And he's like, I don't really know. Like, I don't know if I have the pull to be able to invite new people yet. I'm kind of new still or whatever. So I was patient, and then eventually he felt like, he could invite me. And I joined my first Saturday meeting, and I was hooked. One thing that's been a big sore spot in my life is I haven't had mentors. I haven't had people who I felt like, or even someone who I felt like I could really look up to. And it's something I've been searching for really in my own way, probably, ever since I was a teenager. And in the Brotherhood, I've found not only peers and brothers who I feel like I can learn a lot from and I look up to, but the Babas who I've been exposed to have been as gracious and as warm and as inviting as I could ever ask for. And it's really just made a tremendous difference in my life already. And it's just something that I am eternally grateful for, and I want to do what I can to be that for someone else one day. And in the meantime, do as much good work as I can through the Brotherhood, and just find fellowship and community and help to lift all of us up.
I hear that. And you started to talk about this earlier. What's some of the work that you're doing when you moved out and you said you had a nice resume, 5 internships under your belt, and what field did you end up falling into?
Yeah, so I started working for an investment bank doing equity research. Is the kind of work where you research stocks and you publish buy, sell, hold opinions on those based on different kind of quantitative and qualitative analysis. It was not the right industry for me. I stayed there for 5 years, and I learned a lot, and it was really good to learn about research and financial analysis and the tech industry. I was covering software companies, but ultimately it was not the right fit for me from a cultural perspective whatsoever. I never felt like I fit in, or I never felt like I would have equal opportunity in that world. So I left and I went to business school. I went to business school at Berkeley. I focused on strategy and marketing to just kind of take the quantitative skills I had and research skills and round that out in more of a strategic sense. And so, yeah, I went and worked at a tech company, Autodesk, for 8 years, and I was like an internal consultant there. And I also, learned a ton about how to do strategy and operations, and how analysis can help bridge those worlds to help make better decisions. And ultimately, I kind of aged out of that role as well. I definitely felt like I hit a glass ceiling where I wasn't going to go too much farther in that role after being there for 8 years, and so I set out on my own. So I took my experience and I started consulting independently, and I also started teaching at the business school at UC Berkeley, teaching a data visualization course, and I've been doing that for about 6-7 years. I probably won't be teaching anymore, but I'm still consulting independently, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into more purpose-driven work, though. I'm in a period of transition right now, and I'm just looking to kind of bridge the two worlds. I've always known that I wanted to get into purpose-driven work. I saw my mom, as a social worker growing up, and aside from being in such a giving type of field, she was also always doing some kind of community-oriented projects, and so I believe that's in me. And so I've always been, doing some kind of community type of work as well on the side, but I really want to do that for my life's work from here on out, and so I'm trying to get there.
I hear that. And one of the things I heard you mention earlier was about not having a lot of mentors when you were growing up and just, kind of throughout your career. But if you could be, say, a mentor to yourself, what would be the advice you'd give yourself, your younger self?
Yeah. Adulthood is not a destination. It's not something where, what are you going to be when you grow up? Because I'm still not what I'm going to be when I grow up. I don't think any of us are. We are a snapshot of ourselves, of where we are, when we are. And to understand that life is a complex journey. Life only gets more and more complex. And it's important to be more and more thoughtful about the decisions you make the older you get. And getting to adulthood isn't the goal, shouldn't be the goal, but figuring out how to thrive at each stage of your life and whatever those needs are, to me, should be the goal of life. And figuring out how, when you have something to give, how can you give from a full cup? And just putting more perspective on life is something that I would tell myself. And I know that there's a lot more that I need to learn, and I'm anxious to learn those things from as many angles as I can.
I hear that. What would be some advice you'd give to a younger generation?
I'm going to answer that question a little differently. I think that the advice that needs to be given about the younger generation is to us. This world has changed more rapidly than it ever has in any set of decades in previous history. The change that I've experienced from 1978 until now, 40 plus years, the pace of change has accelerated faster than in any time in history. And I think it's very important for us to understand the challenges that young people grapple with. I think there's some advice that's universal that we can certainly give, but I think the best thing that we can do is seek to understand what their challenges are, what their needs are, and try to meet them where they are in terms of even knowing what kind of advice they might need. We need to understand their world. And even me being 43, to some people, they look at me as someone who's young, but some people look at me as, someone who's, kind of old with, a gray beard and everything. I think it's important for us to understand what young people are grappling with, because even since I've been here for, 20, going on 22 years, I've been out in the Bay, and I can see tangibly how things are so much more difficult for young adults than they were when I moved out here when I was 22 or whatever years old. And I think it's a lot more difficult to be 22, 23, be in your 20s nowadays. And there's a lot more pressures on them. And that's what I would say, that it's important for us to first and foremost understand them and their needs, where they're coming from, before we start giving advice.
Excellent. Is there any thing else that you would like to talk about, or any other advice or things that's on your mind before you wrap up?
This collection of brothers in the Brotherhood are the most accomplished, smart, caring, thoughtful, and well-intentioned group of brothers I've ever been around, hands down. It's an honor to me to be part of the Brotherhood. I will do everything I can to uphold my end of the bargain and, you know, show up in ways for our community that we need to. And I firmly believe that it's incumbent upon all of us, the most accomplished among us, to bring up as many people as we can behind us. It's not a each one teach one. It's a each one grab as many people as you can and bring them up in every way you know how. Because if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? And I feel like I'm answering a calling being here. The brothers that have been introduced in my life, the Babas who I've started to get, form relationships with. I believe that we've come into each other's lives for a reason, and I believe that there's a calling to be answered by all of us who are able to, and I'm just honored to be part of it.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We were looking forward.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
No, we can edit this. So.
Sure. Go ahead.
I want to ask you a question that you may not be ready to answer. But the question is, what is your vision for the Brotherhood of Elders? What do you think you can become?
I think the Brotherhood of Elders can absolutely become what's the word I want to use? A gateway for Black liberation here in Oakland and beyond. I believe we have an opportunity to create systems and structures that work for us instead of against us. And what I mean by that is to develop community programs and projects that are led by us, that have our best intentions at heart, that are closest to the community, and really be a space that these ideas can funnel through and this action can be taken because of. And so developing a structure that enables us to take community action in the way that our community needs is ultimately what I think the Brotherhood needs to be. And I think a really important part of that is making sure that we partner with our sisters as well, and make sure that any folks who are doing good work in our community, we are working with them and doing everything we can to lift each other up. And I think the sky is the limit in terms of what we can do. And what we can do needs to be intergenerational. However far our Babas can get us and hand it over to folks in my generation, and then however far we can get us and hand it down to the next generation, however far they can get us, we each, have an opportunity to do everything we can while we're here. And I really think that's how we need to think of ourselves and think of this opportunity. Here and now.
Wow, it's powerful.
Any other questions?
Do you see this journey as a relay?
Oh, no doubt. I don't see it as a relay. It is a relay. It's been a relay. It's always been a relay. It's always been a relay. And hopefully each successive generation can run faster and faster with more... with what's the word, like each generation hopefully will feel less and less encumbered by the burdens that we have that have faced. Yeah, I like how you put that, a relay.
The baton will be lighter, maybe.
Yeah.
The baton will be lighter. We'll maybe won't have that parachute behind us slowing us down. Yeah.
Someone's been running track, so I can tell.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and just taking time to sit down and answer these questions. We really appreciate having you, and this just adds on to what we've been doing with the project and hearing from Babas and hearing from our warriors as well. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Peace.